minutes and counting. We are on schedule for the launch of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket with the orbital ATK Cygnus cargo resupply module. Launch continues to be scheduled for 11:11 a.m. Once liftoff occurs, it will take the Atlas 21 minutes to place the Cygnus in the proper Earth orbit to rendezvous with the International Space Station. This will be the 71st launch of the Atlas V rocket in the long and storied history of the Atlas. This is a commercial mission by Orbital ATK under a launch agreement with United Launch Alliance as part of NASA's Commercial Resupply Services contract for the space station. Work to fuel the rocket with the liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen began at 8:41 a.m. this morning, approximately 2.5 hours before launch. We'll enter a final planned 30-minute built-in hold just before 10:30 this morning, shortly after which the Air Force Launch Weather Officer will be giving a final weather briefing. And we'll look now at some of the rollout of the Atlas V rocket from yesterday morning, about 9 o'clock. The Atlas V with the Cygnus payload is 191 feet tall, 2 stages plus the payload. The payload fairing enclosing the Cygnus is 14 feet in diameter. The Cygnus module has a diameter of length of 21 feet, and it's 10 feet in diameter. On board, the Cygnus module is 7,626 pounds of cargo going up to the International Space Station. Meanwhile, the RP-1 propellant loading was completed yesterday afternoon, 25,000 gallons of RP-1, and liquid oxygen is loaded aboard now, about 4,800 gallons of liquid oxygen, and all of the countdown activities are continuing ahead on schedule for our 11:11 a.m. liftoff. At T-minus 38 minutes, 8 seconds and counting, this is Atlas Launch Control. Control, T-minus 36 minutes, 5 seconds, and counting. NASA's pleased to announce today that for the first time, you can view this rocket launch in 360 degrees. This is not just for our virtual reality viewers with the 360-degree headsets, but for anyone interested in gaining a panoramic view of the launch straight from their own smart device or personal computer. You can manipulate the video on the screen, virtually placing you closer to a live rocket launch with a 360-degree view just a few feet away from the rocket as it's lifting off. So, to view the stream, go to www.youtube.com/NASA Television and then click on the associated Live Now link, and that will take you to the 360-degree virtual reality view of the Atlas V. All of our activities continue on schedule, not working any weather issues either at the moment. So we're now at T-minus 34 minutes, 51 seconds and counting. This is Atlas Launch Control.
very similar to the ones we launched the past 3 missions. In this particular mission, we've actually added more science capability, so we are actually carrying additional powered payloads for NASA. So once they're loaded into the spacecraft, we actually have power that's supplied to them so they can run their coolers or their freezers. It keeps the test samples fresh for the duration of while we're in Cygnus, and then up until we get to the ISS, where the crew will take them off the spacecraft and start running the experiments.
Well, we have some video now of what we've done for the Cygnus module in the processing to get it ready to fly. So if we could go ahead and run the video, and Frank, you can tell us what we're seeing.
Sure. So this is when we shipped the cargo module from its facility in Torino, Italy, to the launch site. We actually shipped it directly from their factory to the launch site. It actually doesn't see the service module until they come together here. Here we're unpacking it from its shipping container. Once it's unpacked, it'll get placed on its ground support equipment, sort of a holding mechanism. And we'll run some initial checkout of the cargo module, make sure that it survived the shipping perfectly fine. And then once it's been checked out, we'll begin the process of loading the cargo. Here's the service module arriving from our facility in Dulles, Virginia. After it's completed all of its testing at our facility, we ship it to the launch site. And we actually do some initial checkout of the service module on its own to make sure it survives shipping perfectly fine. Here you can see our team is loading the cargo. The actual first piece of cargo we load is the Sapphire experiment, which is the 3rd time we're flying that experiment for the NASA Glenn Research Center. That's installed first. And then the remaining cargo of what we call the initial load, which is roughly 3/4 of the total cargo, is loaded into the cargo module. Once that's complete, they'll transition the cargo module from horizontal to a vertical configuration. We do that so that we can prepare it to get mated to the service module. That's all done with the cargo module and the service module in a vertical configuration. So once it's vertical, the team will attach it to its lifting fixture. It will eventually be lifted off of its ground support equipment and then shifted over by crane. You can see the service module over to the right side of the video. Here we're lowering the cargo module onto the service module. There's mostly mechanical hookups that occur. Once that's done, we'll check out the spacecraft at what we call the Cygnus level, because it's now a completed spacecraft. We'll eventually bag it for transport to the fueling hall. Here they're lowering the completed spacecraft onto the KMAG, which is the motorized transport vehicle. So we'll move it over to the PHSF, which is where we load the hydrazine and the oxidizer onto the spacecraft. At that point, we will transition the spacecraft to be horizontal again, load the remaining cargo, and then it will be encapsulated into the fairing, which has happened here. Once we're inside the fairing, we'll get back on the KMAG, and we'll get rolled out to the vertical integration facility, where it'll get hoisted up high and mounted on top of the Atlas rocket.
Frank, there's something special about this cargo module, and also what the astronauts will see when the cargo module is open. Could you tell us a little bit about the dedication to this module? What makes this a little bit special?
So all of our modules, all of our missions, we've dedicated the spacecraft to an astronaut who's left us. In this particular case, we've had the honor, and we are humbled to name the spacecraft after Senator John Glenn. So we are now flying the SS John Glenn to the ISS today. It's special for our team. Senator Glenn is such an inspiration for so many people in the space industry, and especially for the astronauts, not only at Orbital ATK, but around the world. So we're honored that his family allowed us to name the mission after Senator Glenn.
I guess that's what the crew would see when they open the hatch.
Once they open the hatch, they'll get the hello and Senator Glenn's picture. So we're sure that's going to be a special moment for the crew.
Well, Frank, thank you very much, and we're looking forward to the launch, as well as the activity when it rendezvous with the space station coming up here in a couple of days as well. So thanks so much, and we appreciate having had Orbital ATK with us for the missions that we've launched here from Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, because it's been a very rewarding relationship, I think, for us as well as for Orbital.
Well, it's certainly been special for us, and George, on behalf of my team, I want to congratulate you on your upcoming retirement. We are really pleased that we were able to be part of this mission, and so we thank you for your great service to NASA and the nation, and being the voice of NASA. So thank you very much.
Well, it's been fun to work with Orbital, which goes back quite some ways. In addition to the cargo modules and the space station work here, it goes back to our Pegasus launches with Orbital. That's as right. Well. They go back our first launch out at Vandenberg quite a number of years ago. So it's been fun, and it's good to see a lot of the same team is still with us.
Yep.
So.
Very good.
Frank Demoro, our Vice President General Manager for the Advanced Programs Division for Orbital ATK Space Systems Group for Orbital ATK. And we're now at T-minus 24 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. This is Atlas Launch Control.
Leakage vapor evident at the LOX dump pond. Team evaluated that and has been monitoring. Appears to be a short-term observation during the initial phase of this loading. We had some possible locks in that, but it is cleared. It is not continuing. The team is evaluated from all fronts, and we have no issues with proceeding. Recommend proceeding.
LC concurs. LD.
LD concurs as well.
Prop 1, LC, net 1.
Go.
And you copy an anomaly team recommendation.
Roger that.
Launch control. Science and technology research. The larger enhanced pressurized cargo module that's being launched this morning is carrying 7,626 pounds of crew supplies, spares, and mission hardware, more than any of the previous Cygnus cargo modules launched previously. As we heard, this is the first Cygnus flight on an Atlas having aboard powered active experiments. The onboard cargo will support dozens of the more than 250 science experiments that are aboard the space station. These particular research investigations that are associated with CRS-7 are going to be occurring during the to focus our efforts on going yet further into space. So let's go now to NASA's Tori McClendon, who's standing by with a special guest. Tori?
Thanks, George. I'm here on this gorgeous day. I've got a great view of the iconic vehicle assembly building just over my shoulder. The crowds here are definitely ready to see a launch today. Those of you may not know that Florida Space Coast saw 23 launches just in the last year, and we expect that number to grow in the future. I'm joined here by Kennedy Space Center Director Bob Cabana. Bob, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Tori. What a beautiful day for a launch.
Yes, it certainly is. So, Bob, this is the second cargo resupply mission to the International Space Station this year. Can you tell us what that means for station, and how is that essential to our future?
Well, supplies to the space station are critical. We got to keep that crew alive up there. But I think one of the most important things, besides the supplies, it's the experiments that are going up. And this one is loaded. I think one of the neatest ones is the advanced plant habitat. That's an experiment right here at the Kennedy Space Center. But, you know, learning how to sustain humans in that microgravity environment for extended period of time. If we want to explore beyond our home planet, establish a presence in the solar system, get to Mars one day, you know, it's going to be critical to have a food supply other than just the prepared food
with private industry to resupply the space station, and we're also enabling commercial companies to eventually send astronauts into low Earth orbit. Can you tell us how NASA is enabling innovation through these partnerships?
Well, we've been going back and forth to the low Earth orbit for 50 years. We know how to do that. It's time for NASA to focus on that hard job of exploring beyond our home planet and enable those commercial operations to low Earth orbit. Nowhere is that more evident than right here at the Kennedy Space Center. I mean, we got Boeing over here in OPF Bay 3 behind us, building the CST-100 Starliner spacecraft to take crews to the space station. Out on Pad A, SpaceX has transformed that pad to support both the Falcon 9 and the Falcon 9 Heavy, also flying crews to the space station with the Crew Dragon. They've already had 3 commercial launches off that pad this year. Enabling those operations, it's critical to our future. And, people talk about government or commercial space. It's not either or, it's and. We need both of them to be successful, integrated. And commercial is going to play a big role in supplying and helping us get to Mars.
Yes. So you mentioned Boeing and SpaceX. Tell us what it is that drives industry to the Space Coast.
Well, location for one thing. This is a prime spot to launch rockets to space here on the east coast of Florida. And, then we have the facilities available, but I think it's the talented workforce that's in this area. I can't think of a more dedicated, talented workforce than right here at the Kennedy Space Center and on the Space Coast.
Yes. So, NASA is driving technical capabilities and expertise. Tell us about the benefits of industry being here at Space Coast.
Well, as I said, for one thing, it's enabling this commercial partnership that we have. And we've proven here at the Kennedy Space Center that public-private partnerships work in our agreements with all the commercial companies that are moving in. Doing NASA work here at Kennedy, there are about 7,800 contractors and civil servants paid for with NASA dollars, but there's well over 8,000 people working here, and the number continues to grow. One of the newest additions is Blue Origin, building a huge manufacturing facility in Exploration Park on KSC property, but outside the secure perimeter, for their new Glenn rocket that's going to take humans to space from Launch Complex 36. If you look at, in all of human history, 3 nations have launched humans to space: the United States, Russia, and China. But right now in the United States today, here at the Kennedy Space Center, there are 4 U.S. commercial companies building human spacecraft. Lockheed Martin building the Orion spacecraft right here in the ONC High Bay. Boeing with the CST-100. SpaceX is going to be launching right here on Pad 39A, and then Blue Origin. And I think that's amazing.
It is absolutely amazing. Well, Bob, thank you so much for being here with us.
Tori, thanks for having me. Hey, go Atlas, go Cygnus.
Yes. All right, so we're very excited to see the launch today. And George, back to you.
All right, thanks, Tori. We'll be back to you in just a few minutes with another interview about what's going up to the International Space Station for the crew, particularly the science that's going to be happening. If the launch occurs at 11:11 this morning, the space station is going to be located over the English Channel off the southeast coast of England at an altitude of 255 statute miles. Once the liftoff occurs, we'll be hearing the voice of telemetry engineer Marty Malinowski from the United Launch Alliance calling the Atlas V flight events as they occur. The initial tracking data and telemetry will come from the Air Force tracking station antennas here at Cape Canaveral, and then as the rocket moves to the northeast, the Air Force tracking station in southern New Hampshire, just north of Boston, will also be furnishing data from the ground. They acquired about 4 minutes, 57 seconds into the flight. And then at that point, data begins to flow from space through the TDRS East, the tracking and data relay satellite that's positioned over the Atlantic Ocean. That starts at 9 minutes 49 seconds into the flight and continues through spacecraft separation from the Atlas V, which occurs at launch plus 21 minutes. We're now at T-minus 12 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. This is Atlas Launch Control. Launch Control, T-minus 10 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. NASA has been supporting and resupplying the International Space Station for nearly 2 decades. Its extended life is due in part to the world-class scientists and engineers who've done tremendous work keeping NASA's orbiting laboratory up and running. But crew supplies and spare mission hardware are not the only things headed to the station. With more on the dynamic and potentially life-changing research investigation sitting aboard the Cygnus spacecraft, we go once again to Tori McClendon. Tori?
Thanks, George. You know, you're absolutely right. The science that is soon to be on station is extraordinary. And for those of you watching at home may not know that each experiment has already been paired with the astronauts who will be conducting the research on station. I'm joined now by Dr. Tara Rutley. Tara, thank you for being here.
Good morning. It's really exciting to be here.
It definitely is.
Yes, so happy to be here from the Johnson Space Center. Looking forward to a rocket launch.
Same here. So, can you tell us what makes the International Space Station such a unique platform for scientific research?
Oh, well, the obvious one is the lack of gravity. If you can think of any science experiment you've ever done in school, it's all surrounded by gravity. That's the one variable we cannot control. You take that away, different things can happen, and things can get a little bit unpredictable. And we use that unpredictability to be able to study new things and then learn new things and create new experiments. So it's the microgravity component that's number one. There are many other aspects to space station that's special too, but that's the main one you can't get on Earth.
Thank you. So what makes, tell us about some of the more exciting findings that have been done aboard the space station.
I think one of the most exciting findings from the International Space Station is a finding that's led to an improvement of a drug that's used to treat Duchenne muscular dystrophy. That's a muscle wasting disease. Now, our Japanese colleagues sent up a protein crystal structure, tried to grow that protein crystal on the space station where gravity can't interfere, and they grew it with a medicine they use now, and they just wanted to see if they would learn anything new from being able to grow large crystals. They did. They found a new hidden water molecule that had never been seen before, and they took that information down to Earth and created a more powerful drug that is in clinical trials now that could prolong the lives and the quality of life of people with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. That's amazing.
That is absolutely amazing.
But there's lots of stuff that happens that's different in microgravity. We get good results across the board, both for Earth benefits and space exploration.
So speaking of that, can you tell us about this student experiment that we've been hearing so much about, the antibody investigation that can help enable the chemotherapy? Yes.
So the chemotherapy investigation is actually not the student experiment, but it's okay. It happens a lot that the two get confused. Okay. The student experiment is going to amplify DNA to look at changes in our aging process. But the investigation used to target cancer treatment is really going to use the microgravity environment of space to grow up spherical cultures of cells. And then what they do, this group on Earth, it's a company, they create a way to target chemotherapy treatment right to directly only to the tumor cells. So they attach the nasty drug to what's called an antibody that can find the cell, in which case in microgravity that's a big spherical tumor.
Okay.
And we'll see what we get.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
You're
Thank
very
you for being
welcome.
here.
Yes.
Right. George, back to you.
Thank you, Tori. And right now we're getting ready to hit a milestone in the countdown where we'll be going into a planned built-in hold, which is 30 minutes in duration. And it comes up at T-minus 4 minutes. And at that point, that will give the launch team a chance to catch up on any activities which are open. Also, as well, work any issues that are out there in the background that they'd like to have resolved before we pick up the terminal count at T-minus 4 minutes. Also, just prior to coming out of that hold, we'll be hearing our orbital ATK spacecraft test conductor Clint Combs confirm that the spacecraft is on internal power and that it's been configured for a liftoff today. At T-minus 5 minutes, 38 seconds and counting, this is Atlas Launch Control. 4 minutes, 10 seconds and counting, standing by to go into the planned built-in hold in 4, 3,
This is a programmed 30-minute hold.
Next thing coming up will be a weather briefing from our Air Force Launch Weather Officer, Todd McNamara. Cygnus will be arriving at the space station on Saturday, April 22nd, with a capture at 6:05 a.m. Eastern Time, at which time it will be located over southern France, southeast of Toulouse. Using the station's robotic arm, Cygnus will then be attached by the crew on the bottom of the station's Unity module, where it will spend the next 3 months until mid-July, when it will unberth and depart. This is out at the Cape Canaveral National Seashore, Playa Linda Beach, where a lot of our visitors, especially for spring break, are down enjoying the excellent weather that we traditionally have here during April. This is the Mission Directors Center at the Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center of United Launch Alliance, where our mission managers are gathered and preparing to give their final go for the launch, both for the Atlas V and for the Cygnus. It's actually the Launch Control Center control room, where the majority of our United Launch Alliance Atlas team is monitoring all the systems and commanding the Atlas V rocket. And this is the Johnson Space Center in And this is the Orbital Mission Control Complex in Dulles, Virginia, where Orbital ATK is remotely following the progress of the countdown this morning, and will be watching the Cygnus closely after separation of the spacecraft when it begins to prepare to deploy the solar arrays. And again, back live at Space Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral. T-minus 4 minutes and holding. We're inside our planned 30-minute built-in hold, and we have 21 minutes 40 seconds remaining until we restart the clock. And joining us now is Vern Thorpe, the Program Manager for Commercial Missions from United Launch Alliance. And Vern, we're pleased to have you here to talk not just about what we've done to get this Atlas V ready to fly today, but what we're going to see after the liftoff as well, so everybody will know what to watch for and what's coming. So, Vern, welcome, and if we could go ahead and roll the first tape.
Okay, thanks, George. Okay, the first video we're showing here is some of the processing activities that took place to get ready for today's launch. What you're seeing here are the Atlas vehicle stages arriving on the Mariner, which is the transport ship that we use to bring the stages from our factory in Decatur, Alabama, to the Cape. We can also deliver them to Vandenberg. When they arrive at the Cape, we bring them to the ASOC, or the Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center, for some initial checkout and processing before we go out to the launch pad. We can store several boosters in the ASOC, as you can see there. Once we're ready to go on stand, we'll bring the booster out. We'll mount it to the mobile launch platform, as you see happening right here. That operation took place, I believe, on February 22nd this year. The arrival at on the Mariner that you saw before took place on February 5th. And that was all targeted to the initial launch date that we had in March. Here you see the Centaur going on top of the Atlas, and what you actually have here is the Centaur that's already been integrated with the interstage adapter on the bottom and several of the other adapter structures that we use on top. We put all those pieces together in an offline processing facility and bring them out as a single stack to put on top of the rocket. That saves us a lot of time on the pad. And then, of course, once the two stages have been mated together, we're ready to bring the encapsulated payload fairing, the encapsulated payload out. It's been encapsulated in our payload fairing. We mount that on top of the rocket, and at that point, we just have a few integrated tests to go to get ready for launch, and we're typically just a few days from launch at that point. So those are some of the steps we went through to get ready for today's launch.
Well, that takes us to what we hope is going to happen at 11:11. Are we still tracking that liftoff time of 11:11?
We are. It's looking good right now. So I think our next video will give you a preview of what you can expect to see during today's launch.
All right.
5, 4, 3. We have Atlas ignition. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. We have liftoff of the Atlas V rocket.
So this is our Atlas V 401 configuration. It has no SRBs. It's just a single core rocket. It's kind of the workhorse of our fleet. We've flown about 35 or 36 of these, about half of the Atlas Vs. It lifts off with almost 900,000 pounds of thrust. That booster stage will burn for a little over 4 minutes. And at that point, the vehicle will be moving at about 10,000 miles per hour, but we still have a ways to go before we're in orbit. So initial Centaur burn will last a little over 13 minutes and 21 seconds. This is what we're predicting today. That will put us in a low Earth orbit. That's the initial orbit that the Cygnus module wants to get to. We'll coast for a couple of minutes, orient the vehicle properly for separation, and separate, as you see right there. Separation will occur slightly less than 21 minutes after launch, so this is a fairly short duration mission. Now, after separation, we'll begin a series of maneuvers to safe the Centaur and get it away from Cygnus so there's no chance of recontact. And then we're going to coast for almost another half an hour, and then we will do one more very short burn. It's about a 12-second burn, and that burn will allow us to do a controlled deorbit of the Centaur upper stage. And a little after an hour after liftoff, the Centaur will re-enter south of Australia over the ocean, over open water. And that's kind of the standard process we use these days for disposing of that upper stage, so we don't have any issues with orbital debris.
Well, Vern, that means after spacecraft separation, you still have a lot of things to follow for a while longer, while the Cygnus is getting ready to deploy its arrays.
That's right.
We've just had confirmation from Orbital ATK, from Clint Combs, the test conductor, that Cygnus is being transitioned to internal power. and the service module built in the United States by Orbital ATK. And the Atlas that it's flying on is actually the same a derivative of the one John Glenn flew into space during the Mercury program in 1962. And then atop the Atlas, giving the final boost to the cargo module, is a Centaur high-energy upper stage, which was originally developed by NASA. Cygnus is going to be resupplying the crews on the space station with clothes, food, water, and equipment, and all of the commodities that the astronauts need to live and work in orbit. And then, in addition to that, all of the experiments that will be keeping the crews busy. The Cygnus is going to arrive at the space station on Saturday, April 22nd, with a capture at 6:05 a.m. Eastern Time, where it will remain attached to the Unity module until mid-July, when it will unberth and depart, and the current planned re-entry date is July the 25th. Our countdown channels are relatively quiet right now. We're not working any significant issues that would preclude a liftoff at 11:11 this morning. Very shortly, we'll hear our United Launch Alliance launch conductor Scott Barney come on and poll the team for their readiness, and we'll get a final go from ULA's launch director Bill Cullen. Once the Atlas lifts off, it'll be on an azimuth of 44.4 degrees, and the orbital inclination the video on the screen, virtually placing you closer to a arrived rocket with a 360-degree view, just a few feet away from the Atlas rocket as it's lifting off. So it's an easy stream to find. Just go to www.youtube.com/NASA television, and then just click on the associated Live Now link.
L minus 10 minutes.
CMD, LC.
This is Atlas Launch Control. We're approximately 10 minutes from launch. All things on schedule for an 11:11 a.m. liftoff. I would like to
Securing L2 topping.
gyros going from manual to automatic at this point on the rocket. At 25 seconds, we'll get a final go from the launch team.
T-minus 1 minute, 59 seconds.
Vehicle internal.
55.
Launch sequencer start.
150.
Securing Centaur LH2.
Securing Centaur LO2.
Countdown now on
140.
automatic.
Launch enabled.
137.
FTS armed.
130. 120.
OCU's armed.
SCS count started.
115. 110.
Vent valves locked.
T-minus 1 minute.
Rock, report range status.
Range green.
54.
Range is go, including weather. Final go pulled at 25 seconds.
40.
Stable at step 3.
Minus 30 seconds.
28.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Go for main engine start. 1, 0, and liftoff of the Atlas V rocket with Cygnus and the SS John Glenn, extending the research legacy for living and working in space.
roll program has begun. Body rates look good.